It seems that a common problem among recent manga has been the lack of payoffs. Quite a bit of manga seem to set up a lot of character development and plot points, but they wait until the very end of the story to utilize them. At which point there is simply too many things to resolve and not enough time, leaving most of those things with unsatisfying conclusions. Among these manga is Jujutsu Kaisen. I loved JJK, I really did. From the characters and the themes to the fights and the power system, I loved all of it, and I thought it had unparalleled potential to be one of the best, or at the very least, one of my favorite manga ever. Unfortunately, a lot of that potential ended up being wasted. Before getting to what I mean by saying Jujutsu Kaisen is the manga of wasted potential, first we gotta go to the part where I lost interest in JJK, where I started to notice the problems that got us where we are. Gojo's death, to me, signifies the start of the fall of Jujutsu Kaisen. Although it's a controversial moment, Gojo is neither my favorite character, nor do I think killing characters off-screen is a bad thing. Thus, I have no issues with it, and I will not be going into it any deeper. However, if you turn your attention to the graph, you can see that post-Gojo's death, Jujutsu Kaisen suffers a significant drop in quality. After Gojo dies, the fight enters this cycle that's not all that uncommon in anime, where the main characters are losing. They come up with a new tactic that might work against Sukuna. It doesn't work against Sukuna. Sukuna kills someone, not really. Then they come up with a new tactic that might work against Sukuna. It doesn't work against Sukuna. Sukuna kills someone, not really. And that goes on for over 30 chapters. With JJK going on break every 3 weeks, that's almost an entire year. I don't think I need to explain to you why knowing exactly what will happen in the next chapter doesn't make you all that excited to read it. What makes it all worse is there is a clear moment where the fight should have ended. Yuta activating his domain is the moment the fight should have reached its climax. The two MCs are fighting the main villain alone, and they both just revealed new techniques. Narratively, it is the perfect moment to start wrapping things up. Plus, we can avoid about 20 chapters of that pointless cycle. After Yuta's domain, everything that happens is either characters we don't really care about getting their ass beat, really poorly done, shocking moments, I'll get to that later, or bullshit binding vows that let Sukuna keep fighting. And if you think that will make the fight too short, we could always see Hakari versus Uraume. Speaking of, I know Hakari was the one to fight Uraume, because if he was in the final fight, he'd win. Okay, not literally, but I do think that with Hakari, it wouldn't have made sense for the fight to go on as long as it did. I'd say Hakari is somewhere near Maki in terms of raw power, if not stronger. And Maki was putting in some really good work against Sukuna until she took too much damage. See where I'm going with this? Since Hakari can just heal any injuries, the only way for Sukuna to kill him is to use his fire technique, which he cannot do unless he is in his domain or in a 1v1. So I think Hakari would have dealt enough damage to Sukuna before he got his domain back to the point where it wouldn't have made sense for the fight to go on as long as it did. It's just a theory, but I don't think it's too far-fetched. I'm not done talking about the final fight just yet. Shock factor, aka the poor man's cliffhanger. Now listen, if you want to get your readers to read the next chapter by putting something shocking into the current one, by all means, but you can't overdo it. When it comes to shock factor, the more it's used, the less effective it is. Even more so, the more shocking it is. You can make something really horrible and messed up happen in your story, but if you keep doing it, your audience will not only start to expect it, but also accept it as a part of your story, thus making it lose its shock value. Basically, you can't hope to keep your readers engaged by shock factor alone. You need to fill out your story with, well, an actual story. Which brings me to the final fight's biggest problem. The never-ending, constant barrage of shocking moments. Massive quotation marks around the shocking. Now, this is normal for final fights, but it's the sheer amount that's the problem. In the 35 chapters following Gojo's death, there are about 46 moments that I think, your results may vary, were meant to shock us. Now, these moments aren't necessarily shocking, but rather moments that I think Gege wanted us to see as shocking. And as we've established already, shocking moments get old really quickly. So if you take that ridiculous amount of shocking moments and add to that the fact that most of them don't even have an impact on the final fight, you're left with a final fight that's pretty boring to read. Now, while the final fight is the biggest problem in JJK, it's not the most important one, and it's most certainly not what I mean when I say JJK is the manga of wasted potential. It's not just that the manga itself could have been better, the characters, their techniques, plot lines, those all had potential that never got realized. Panda's third form was shown in 2 panels, got its ass whooped, and was never shown again. Inuaki has one of the most interesting techniques and it's barely ever used. Hakari was only shown in a single fight against a barely relevant opponent. Junpei just dies as soon as he's introduced. The 2 best villains are dead before the story even starts, and don't even get me started on Kyoto's principal, whose weapon is a fucking electric guitar. How do you not do something with that? Then you have things like the American military invading the Culling Games, which was over in like 2 seconds. The merger that kind of just didn't happen. And I think the factions within Jujutsu Society outside of Jujutsu High could have been shown a little bit just to see what Jujutsu Society is actually like. Because that whole thing about changing Jujutsu Society has very little weight if we never actually get to see what the society looks like. And while I'm not that interested in it, a lot of people want to see Sukuna's and Kenjaku's backstories, and just the Heian era in general. So while most of those things aren't essential to the story of JJK, not using or expanding upon them further just feels like a waste, and I hope you can see what I mean when I say JJK has a lot of wasted potential. But much more importantly, there are things that are essential to the story that have been wasted. Almost the characters in JJK are either meant to provide character development within or support Yuji, and thus aren't designed to get character development themselves. Megumi and Nobara were meant to develop. Let's get the easy one out right away. Nobara just isn't there for most of the series. Clearly, there were always plans to do something with her, otherwise they would have pronounced her dead and not kinda alive. But unfortunately, those plans ended up giving us the worst moment in JJK. When Nobara returns near the end of the final fight, I genuinely just started laughing out loud due to the sheer ridiculousness of the moment. First of all, it happens way after the shock factor lost any kind of effectiveness it once had. It's surprising, but not shocking. Second of all, it kind of feels like a last-minute ass pull. Like Gege forgot that Nobara was alive and had to put her in somewhere. It was probably planned out, but due to all the other shocking moments, it kind of feels like a last-minute addition. Third of all, it just happens way too late, leaving Nobara no time to do anything interesting, and turning her into a plot device rather than a character. Megumi, on the other hand, does have a lot of page time, and does develop somewhat throughout the story. Though unfortunately he gets kidnapped by Sukuna, turning him into a plot device as well. This wasn't that big of a deal though, because he had some of the best character moments in the final arc when he was trying to decide whether he wants to live or die. Unfortunately that got resolved within a single chapter because he changed his mind for whatever reason without any outside influence. Him dying would have been an actually interesting death, not only because of Yuji, but also because of us, because he is a well-liked character. Him deciding to live could have been fine as well if it just wasn't done so quickly, and if post-fight there was just more things to do, but of the 5 chapters we got, 3 of them were wasted on pointless exposition. Still though, much better than Nobara. Yuji is in a similar position to Megumi. He obviously gets the most development out of anyone in the series, but like Megumi, his dilemma simply gets resolved way too fast. The end goal for Yuji was to find his own motivation for doing things. In the beginning it was to help people, but this was put on him by someone else, and he didn't quite understand what that means. Later, he decides to fight curses simply because he's a sorcerer and that's what sorcerers do, Kangen machine and all that. Obviously that's not a great mentality to have, but I also think it's the mentality that old higher-ups within Jujutsu Society wanted people to have and Gojo wanted to get rid of. I think there is more to it, but it is a kind of listen to what they tell mentality that the old Jujutsu traditionalists wanted people to have. Though I don't think it was properly portrayed, we do know that Jujutsu Society does not care about the individual and is willing to throw them away the second they stop being useful, as we saw with Geto. So we're on the right track here. Yuji has a very interesting dilemma that parallels nicely with Gojo's mission of changing Jujutsu Society. All that needs to be done is to change Yuji's motivation. But not in a single chapter. I think the conclusion Yuji came to is fine, that no matter what role he has, as long as he leaves something behind, he'll be satisfied, and it was never about the way people died, but rather about those who did not care about others' lives. But it happened too quickly. The last time we see Yuji get any kind of character development was over 100 chapters ago, and between then and now, nothing happened that indicated any kind of change within him. It again feels like an important part of the story was completely forgotten about, and then later given a rushed conclusion simply to complete that arc. But worst of all, the main trio just doesn't feel like a trio, because they're not for most of the story. Like I said, Nobara presumably dies and Megumi gets kidnapped, making their relationship feel extremely underdeveloped. Also, I just don't think they have a whole lot of chemistry. Maybe Yuji and Megumi do, but Nobara is just kind of there. especially compared to Gojo, Geto, and Shoko, who are just a better example of what a trio should look like. So while everyone has been saying that the last couple of chapters were bad, and they were, for me, the problem started a while back. A lot of it can be boiled down to, like I said in the beginning, a lack of payoffs. Had some of the main characters or plotlines been given better conclusions, I'm sure the impact of some other issues would have been significantly smaller. But unfortunately, a lot of things in Jujutsu Kaisen had a lot of potential that simply never got realized to its full extent. Thank you for watching.